Welcome to our one-on-one session with Thought Leader by Seekho. Today's thought leader is Abhijith Laxman. Briefing you a little about Seekho. Seekho is the first micro-learning based community wherein you can learn just anything you want in a minute. In short, it is a world where knowledge meets seekers. Now, I would like to pass on the stage to our today's thought leader so that they can introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Abhijith here. My name is Abhijith Laxman. A small introduction about myself. I work as a sales. I work as a sales account executive in this company called MongoDB. I've been here. I've been in the SaaS industry for about 8 years now. In the beginning of my career, I started in TCS, and then from there, which was a testing role, which was into technology domain space. From there, I moved on to Zomato, and then from there, Freshworks, and then Netcore, and today I'm doing in MongoDB. Part of the India team, and excited to be a part of this discussion. Yes, that's a brief about me.
We are glad to have you here, and we are sure that our audience will benefit from all the questions you will be answering now. So we'll move on to the Q&A round. So the first question is, can you tell us a little about what an account management role in IT companies is all about?
All right. Account management is also known as farming. A lot of places you will also hear the name farming. This essentially comes under the sales function of every business. So let me just give you a small brief about what sales function is all about. There are two kinds of divisions in sales. The first one is account executive or hunters, or you call it hunters. These are sales guys who go around bringing in new logos, new businesses onto your products and services. Once these customers are onboarded, it gets passed on to account managers. Account managers are also called as farmers. So by the name, what it says, they farm the account. So what they do is they essentially go ahead which means you are responsible for the revenue that comes to the business through these existing businesses who are already onboarded. So this happens in two ways. One is cross-selling, which means if you have, let's say, multiple products within your organization, you can go ahead and cross-sell. If somebody has bought A product, you can go ahead and sell them B product. Another thing is about upselling them, which means your ticket size. Let's say somebody has bought, let's say 100. If you have onboarded a customer who is worth $100,000, you sell them some other product or upgrade them and make them, make that revenue to 200K. So that's called upselling. So this is landing and expanding into a business is called account management. That's the main objective behind it, and that's how the quota and the sales cycle always work.
Earlier, I didn't have any idea about account management, but I think you have given me a fair perspective of what it is.
So purely when we're talking about sales, right? It's all about cold calling, reaching out to your customers, by emails and all of those things once you've onboarded them. In account management, it is more onto the relationship building. How do you understand the persona of those people, right, who are there in that organization? Try to understand what are their in-depth problems and try to mitigate them with XYZ products, other products that you already have, or let's say reach out to other departments within a company and then give them a similar solution. They have these customers whom you have already onboarded they love a product, right? That's why they are still with you. You try to solve more problems of theirs and try to upsell and get in more revenue from these businesses. That's what the main agenda of account managers are.
Okay, I see you were able to answer the question in like 90 seconds, so it is good. Moving on to our second question. What is the career path in account management? Like, how does one start and grow in this profile?
Essentially, account management, which is a part of the sales function by itself, you do not directly go into account management. You need to know first what sales is all about. You become a hunter, which is account executive, where you know the nitties and gritties of how to make sale, how to make a conversation with the customer, how do you do value selling, and it starts from there. Once you have the basic understanding of what sales is all about, is when you start getting few accounts that you can handle, where where while you already know the basics of sales, you'll also be given responsibilities of relationship building, which essentially means you need to land and expand, which means you need to create champions who are your advocates of your products within their organization. They help you navigate within the organization and give you more and more business. So that's all about account management. So it starts from right from sales, then you become an account manager, then you get a lot of territory, because account management by itself is a large function, right? It's a very heavy revenue making function. You take any organization, for maybe it can be Salesforce, it can be Microsoft. The revenue that is generated from account management or farming is huge. So eventually you need to know the basics of sales, and then eventually you come into account management. So that's how it
So,
works.
account manager is also involved in sales. Like they start from sales.
They start from sales. It's the basic things you need to know, basics of sales, how to make a deal, how do you go ahead and close it. When it comes to account management, you have relationship building. You need to navigate within other organizations, within other departments within an organization, and try to give them the flavor of what your products can give, and naturally try to land and expand. So that's the funda of account management. It's landing and expanding, and you get more and more revenue out of your existing customers.
Okay, okay. So, account management starts from sales and it goes into a post-sales role, like everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, question 3: what kind of problems do account managers generally help companies solve?
So account managers are the go-to guys, right? When it comes, let's take an example. Let's say you're a company, you're running a company, you're running a business, and let's say you're taking services from Salesforce, and I am the account manager for your brand. I will be your go-to guy for all of the services that you need from Salesforce, right? Made anything related to billing, anything related to the other offerings that are coming from Salesforce. So what me as a function, what I need to do, what I need to give you as services, is essentially try to understand what are the problems that you're currently facing, and what are the other places where how we can mitigate those problems through the products that we have, through the other products that we have. Try to mitigate that with those products. And also my role is to sort of get introduced to other departments within your business, and see how Salesforce can actually work. So while Salesforce is just an example, this is how account managers do. They understand more and more about your strategy. We try to understand your business strategy. What are your next goals? What are your roadmaps looking like? What kind of customers are you going to onboard? And then kind of craft a technology or a solution and give it. So I should be on the toes, trying to understand what your roadmap is going to be like for the financial year, and that's what I would be doing as an account manager.
Can account management be like related to, like, is it similar to managing accounts, or is it just defined to this? Like, does it end
Yeah.
at the, yeah?
So account managers are essentially given a territory of accounts. Let's say 50 accounts or 100 accounts. What they're supposed to do is they are bound within those accounts itself, and they will be working over there. Essentially, as account managers, it should not be mistaken as somebody from a support or a customer success, because these are separate functions. Account managers are solely responsible for generating more revenue from the existing customers. That's what their sole intent is, or that's their main KPI. While they will be responsible for, let's say, if they are not getting a particular kind of service or support from your team, and then they become your escalation points. So they are like in a movie there is a director. Account manager is like a director who talks to multiple teams and make sure that your customer gets what they really want.
Yeah, that analogy of movie and the director was like it was quite good. Yeah. Moving on to our next question. For those who don't understand technology and databases like me, can you explain what is MongoDB and NoSQL in general?
Okay, let me actually give you what a database actually is, and then it'll be easier for me to say that. Every application that we use today, right? May it be Google Pay or Paytm or whatever it is, for this application to run, right? There are a lot of information that is stored. It tells you your name, it tells you your address, what's your account balance, it tells you what all transactions you've done. So there's a lot of data that is there, and this data is stored in a place called database. So every application to run, it has a database. Now, what is so before I jump into what NoSQL is, I need to tell you what SQL is. So how database essentially is being stored, like you would have heard in your in your school when you've done your computer science courses, you would have seen rows. You'd had to line data was stored in the form of tables, rows, and columns, and all of those things. So those are called relational databases. Like you take the example of Oracle or MySQL. All of those things, the data is stored in the form of rows and tables. So this all started in 1970s when database was introduced, and ever since then, with the advancement in the computing world, nothing much changed in the way we store and work with the data. It's still been followed as tables and rows, right? 10 years back, around 2008, 2009 is when the NoSQL came up. So NoSQL is we are changing the way the data is stored, right? It's no longer stored in the form of tables and columns. The reason why we came up with this is because as simple as a Paytm app is, right? It just showcases you. It's not as simple as how it shows you in a table and a form. Like there are hundreds and thousands of tables, and to manage these hundreds and thousands of tables, it's very difficult. Even if you click on a button, show me all the last transaction, it has to actually go to hundreds of tables and refer, and then that's how it showcases the data, which made it a lot more complex. Developers couldn't. It found them very difficult to code, understand maintain these tables, and come up with new features. It became very difficult for them. That's how the rise of NoSQL database came. So, NoSQL database, we do not store the database in the form of rows and columns. It is stored in a different format. There are multiple kinds of databases. One of that is MongoDB, which uses a document style of storing the data, which means, let's say if it's Shivali or somebody else, whoever is storing the data, all their information is stored in one single document. You don't have to go to multiple tables to get the value. You can just go to Shivali's document, open that, and showcase. So that's what that's an example of what MongoDB is all about.
Okay, so is MongoDB different from other players that there are? Because they also save it in document format, or is it something different that you do?
Yeah, so there are multiple kinds of NoSQL databases. When you're talking about, when we are going away from tables and rows, there are multiple kinds of data tables. One way of showcasing the database is document model, and that is like MongoDB, DynamoDB. You would have heard of Cosmos DB, Redis. All of these are examples of NoSQL database. So they store their data in document model. It can be wide column database. There are something called graphical databases, which is very common for your social media, IoT devices, all of those things, where you have your relation and relation between two entities, all of those things are stored. So there are multiple ways through which you store NoSQL data. So these are a few of them.
So since you are able to make me understand and I am a noob in this thing, so I think you're doing pretty good here.
Cool.
Moving on to our next question. How is NoSQL different from SQL?
So, like I said, SQL is structured query language, which means this is a language that is used by developers to go ahead and get the data. It's stored in rows and columns. Let's say as simple as, let's say, a Paytm. When you use a Paytm app, right? If you just click on a button saying, hey, showcase me all the 5 transactions that I have done, or let me give you a better example. Let it be. Let's say in a class of in a school, which tell me those students who scored highest in mathematics, who are from higher secondary school, right? If this is a very complex query, it has multiple grouping to be done, multiple sorting to be done. So this if you have to write this query, right, in a SQL language, you'll have to use at least 10 or at least 100 lines you'll have to write, because your data is not stored in one single table. You have to do multiple joins, you have to sort the data and all of those things. You'll have to write hundreds of lines. But whereas in a NoSQL language, you just have to write one line of code, which means the data that is the way the data is stored is way simpler. With the document model or the graphical model of the data, it is stored much more simpler. So these SQL languages becomes very easy for the developers. So it is one of the most preferred languages for developers to use or build applications. It becomes easier for them in cases of updation of data or new features rolling out. It becomes really easy for the developers to use NoSQL language.
NoSQL is easier than like normal, like
Yes,
SQL.
yes. You can avoid hundreds of lines of codes by just using one line of code in NoSQL. So
Yeah.
that's how simple it is.
Okay. Yeah, and is MySQL in somewhat way like related to NoSQL or stuff SQL?
MySQL is relational database. Oracle, IBM DB, and MySQL. All of these are traditional databases, relational database, which means the data is stored in the form of rows and columns.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm learning MySQL in my college, so that is why. Yeah. Sixth question: what are the common issues with traditional databases?
So
So moving on to question 6, what are the common issues with traditional databases?
the common issues with relational databases is, number one is that the developers find it really hard to, since there are hundreds of tables and rows and columns, when you even have to write a one simple query, right, you actually need to know how the tables are structured. So there is additional layer that comes, which is called ORM, which will tell you, it's a diagram, okay, which will tell you it's very simple. It'll actually tell you the relationship with, if there are, let's say, hundreds of tables, it actually tells you the relationship between each and every table, how the data is being connected with one another. So they'll have to actually check the ORM and write those queries, which means hundreds of queries that they have to write. It's very difficult for them. And if there are any updates or new features that are coming in, again they have to go to the board, they have to see, okay, how is the ORM there, and let's say if you are changing some table or anything like that, then the entire structure gets broken down. Then you have to rebuild the ORM and then release it. So the release cycles are very, very heavy in terms of traditional databases. The you can do around 10 12 updates. I'm talking about a mid-sized business companies can do only 10 to 12 updates every year. Right, whereas with NoSQL databases, you will be able to do it much faster. Another problem with traditional databases is that, let's say you're running a business in India, right, and you're trying to expand globally. Let's say thinking of somewhere in Europe, and where you have GDPR compliances and many other compliances, which means that you need to store the data over there itself, within the European region itself, if it's generated over there. So what we have to do is we'll have to split the database. It's called sharding. So all of those things becomes very easy with NoSQL. But in cases of traditional database, it becomes very difficult. Now the coder has to sit and write long codes. All of these splitting of databases all have to be managed. That becomes very difficult with traditional databases in terms of governance, in terms of security. It becomes very, very difficult. So these are few of the problems that are there with traditional databases. I've named just a few of them, but we can go much deeper later on, maybe.
Yeah, so traditional databases are like time consuming and they are like less secure. Yeah.
I wouldn't say less secure. They are time consuming in terms of splitting your database, which is called sharding, and then managing their backups. It becomes very, very difficult with traditional databases. With modern databases, you'll be able to handle those situations much more easily.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. Moving on to next question. Which are some of the popular NoSQL databases that people should know about?
Um, you can so there are popular ones like MongoDB, which is one of the most wanted database of developers. You have DynamoDB, which is offering from AWS. You have Cosmos DB. We have Redis. These are a few of the NoSQL databases that you can learn. There's plenty of information out there in the internet. You if you want to get elementary knowledge about these things, it's readily available across the internet.
Yeah, I'll Google about it. Next question. What are the different types of NoSQL databases?
So there are multiple. So like I said, there are multiple ways of storing of approaching a NoSQL database, right? One is a document model where let's say information that is accessed together is stored together in the form of documents. Then there is something called wide columns. That's also another way of a NoSQL database. We also have graphical database like which is in the use cases of let's say IoT devices. Let's say your smartwatches or some of those machinery use cases, right, in manufacturing where you need to store a lot of data that are coming in, or let's say social media kind of use cases is where graphical databases come. So these are different kinds of NoSQL database types that are there in the industry.
Like, which of these do you find best? Like, what do you think is the best?
Hey, I'm so it depends on your workload, the kind of industry you're in, right? If you are somebody who is again from IoT or where you are running some social media kind of websites which has interlinks with friends and organizations, what you get what I'm trying to say. Like the example of let's say a community websites or like Facebook like websites, I think a graphical database will make more sense. Let's say if you are in an organization which is like the new age organizations like the Uber of the world, Cred, where you have multiple use cases coming in, where you have a lot of new features coming in, I think document model works fine over there. But then again, it totally depends on the kind of use case that you have and the problem that you're trying to solve. You can go ahead with that.
So the type of database to be used depends on the user, like, or the use that you need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Our next question is: when does it make sense to use NoSQL database structures over a traditional relational database management system, that is RDBMS?
Yeah. So like I said, RDBMS kind of databases were traditionally used earlier, right? In banking systems, from like 1970s to up to early 2000s, that's what is the application that is being used. But currently now, if you see the new age new age companies, right, which are fast evolving, who have new features coming in every a month or every 2 months, if they are rolling out new features to enhance the customer experience, there are new these are the kind of organizations who should ideally be using NoSQL databases, where your developers are also modern, your cloud, your industry or your business itself is adopting to a cloud, or using modern tools, who want to iterate faster and come out and roll out new features according to the changing demands of the business. These are those companies who should be actually ideally be evaluating NoSQL databases.
Yeah. Okay. I think I get a
Organizations
fair
like,
idea.
yeah, organizations like Uber, Cred are very good examples. Bharat Pay,
Hmm.
Paytm, who are solving new age problems. I think these are those organizations who should be using NoSQL, where you need to sort of understand the customer. Let's say Shifali comes onto a website, let's say e-commerce website. What are the things that she's choosing? And depending upon that, I can give you certain personalized coupons, or I can show you personalized content on the website. Let's say you go to Amazon's, the website is personalized for Shifali. The way Shifali sees versus what Abhijit will see is different. How do you achieve this personalization? With the data that is collected, what are the items that you are browsing, and we will be showcasing that personalized to you. So for doing all of those things to give customers a great customer experience, if you are ready, if you are in that kind of strategy that you are taking as a business, I think you should definitely look at NoSQL databases.
Okay. Yeah. I think I don't really think that I'll be able to get like use much of NoSQL in future because I am a management aspirant. But then account managers use this, so I think people will have to eventually shift to NoSQL. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
yeah. Our 10th question is: what are the misconceptions that people generally have about NoSQL?
So NoSQL is this came recently, right? In the last 10 years or so, people used to think that NoSQL is like a wild west, right? You can just bring in whatever information that you want, and there's no rules and regulations about it. That's not okay. That's a misconception. We do have something called data validation, which validates the kind of data that is there. Which means, let's say, if there is a phone number, you cannot just put alphabets over there or a string value over there. It will be the phone number should have numbers as their input data type. So all of those things with data validation, all of those things are there. Then we have something called ACID transaction guarantees. Let's say, I'll simplify this and tell you what people thought was, there is the database is not that reliable, which means in a banking transaction, let's say, if A wants to transfer some amount to B, and if the amount, if you do it right, and if the transaction doesn't go, then it has to be rolled back, and the money has to be coming back to the person A. So that's a guarantee that the database gives. So that kind of guarantee is not there, is what people think, but we do give that. It's called ACID guarantees, and we do give that in so there are many other misconceptions, but these are fairly the top ones that people think NoSQL databases do not have. So, but that's not there. That's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that people, if they do not use a certain software, certain program, they have misconceptions. So first they have to use it, then they'll be able to clear like all those misconceptions. Yeah. Our next question is: who can benefit from learning more about NoSQL databases? Like, where should they start?
Okay, so see, database itself is a technical, function, right? And people, right from the people who are working on it day in and day out, are the developers. They should definitely know about NoSQL database. Then comes people who are there in the line of business, which is like product managers, who are responsible for rolling out new features and owning those features. So these are people who should actually know about, exposed to NoSQL. And then there are architects who are actually, for every business, who are responsible for seeing what kind of software should we actually use for our business and what makes best for us. So there are architects who are there in a business, and of course the C-level people for making your strategic decisions about what softwares we need to use. So these are the kind of people who should be knowing about NoSQL. But Other business functions, right, like sales and marketing, I think it's a good to know kind of a thing, what actually goes behind, how data is stored. I think it's a great thing to know. It's a good thing to know.
Yeah, so there is
Super.
an added advantage if you know about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Moving on to our last question. What are some career opportunities around NoSQL in India?
See, India as a market which is IT heavy, these developers, if they can learn, see, there are a lot of people who know relational, SQL languages, but NoSQL is coming today with the rise of a lot of new age applications. All of these applications today are using NoSQL because it's easy to iterate and bring in new features. So the developers today have a lot of opportunity to go ahead and learn NoSQL, this thing, and you get paid a lot. I mean, you become rich if you are a developer at a NoSQL language. You can get a lot of money. I mean, that's not the only thing. You get to work with modern tools, modern applications, which and you can do differentiated work. You don't need to sit and code a lot of security features and unwanted work that you would be doing. It's much more easier. You can work on new features, get them rolled out much more faster if you were to learn this. And the demand is very, very high. All the new age applications are looking for people who have no NoSQL language expertise.
Yeah. So these NoSQL and these developers have been in rise from recently, right? Because I don't think during my parents' time it was as looked upon this
In
career field.
Right. In fact, even when I was in school, I don't think I had exposure to NoSQL. There was no concept as such. I think this is how the data is stored, and this is how you have to store. That's how it was taught to us. But these guys, whoever, I mean, the founders of all of these organizations have brought in a lot of technological differences, advancement over this, and have gotten which is providing a lot of advantage to these new age companies today with the rise of NoSQL.
Yeah. This finishes our Q&A round. Thank you for answering
Good.
all these questions with such perfection and ease at the same time, and I thoroughly enjoyed. I hope you did as well.
I hope so. I did enjoy. I did enjoy. Speaking
Yeah.
to you guys. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you
Shefali,
for
for taking this time and inviting me for this conference. Thank you.
it was a pleasure having you here.